Oh my God, folks, the dishonest hack Dave Smith was completely debunked during his latest performance on the Piers Morgan show. What happened? They were discussing what's going on in Iran, a possible war or strike on Iran, and Dave Smith trotted out the usual line by people like him, which is that Iran is essentially a peace-loving nation, and all of this is a plan by the neocons and by Israel, of course, to wage war for imperialist purposes, okay? This is what he was saying all the time, has been saying all the time, specifically about Iraq. According to Dave Smith and people like him, Iraq was a war that was instigated by Israel controlling the neocons in the United States to wage this war for no reason whatsoever. Now, I'm not saying that the war in Iraq was a good thing. It was probably a mistake, but it was America's mistake, not Israel's. So what has Dave Smith's evidence been all this time? A memo. A memo declaring that there was a plan to topple all of these regimes in the Middle East. Here is a recap of all the times that Dave Smith mentioned this infamous memo.
We also have a four-star general who's on record saying that he saw these plans, that they were going to go overthrow all of these governments. But why is it then that I got four-star General Wesley Clark, Supreme Commander of the NATO forces? Why is it that he told me that he saw the plans? We know this because the four-star General Wesley Clark himself said that he was out of power at the time, but he went to the Pentagon and he said that he saw plans. How come I have four-star General Wesley Clark telling me 10 years prior that we had already made the plan? This has been confirmed by four-star General Wesley Clark that we were going to topple 7 countries in 5 years. Wesley Clark's a four-star general. He was the head of NATO, and he told Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! That he saw in late 2001 what is become known as the 7 wars in 5 years, that the plan from the neocons in the government was that we were going to overthrow all these governments in the region in the next 5 years.
Let's talk about this Wesley Clark memo that he never saw. Okay, so four-star General Wesley Clark.
He never saw it?
Yeah, he says so in the C-SPAN interview. You don't remember this? He's talking about it. He says
that this guy.
He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me.
Rumsfeld, whose sometimes abrasive approach often alienated others.
So he goes on and on talking about the memo seen by four-star General who? Wesley Clark, right? Four-star General Wesley Clark. Four-star General Wesley Clark. Saw a memo. Well, first of all, he didn't even see the memo, okay? Somebody told him about the memo, as you saw over there. But also, does this memo actually mean there was a policy 25 years ago to overthrow all of these Middle Eastern countries that was, consistently being pursued by successive U.S. administrations? It's quite a stretch by Dave Smith. But I think the person best capable or best equipped to answer the question of the four-star memo mentioned by, the memo mentioned by four-star General Wesley Clark is four-star General Wesley Clark. So let's listen to four-star General Wesley Clark on the Piers Morgan show debunking what Dave Smith has been citing for the last 2 years. Here we go.
Okay, let me just take a short break from the panel. I'll come back to you in a moment. I want to just move now because Dave Smith referenced the infamous list which held that Iran was always the aim in the Middle East, and we're now joined by the former NATO commander, General Wesley Clark. General Clark, great to have you back on Uncensored.
Thank you.
There was, of course, this famous Pentagon memo, which you saw shortly after 9/11. You said it described a plan to take out 7 countries in 5 years, beginning with Iraq, ending with Iran. The other countries were Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan. Some will look at this and say, well, this is the fruition of the plan, and Iran is the last one standing. Lebanon, of course, a bit more complicated, but the others have all gone through regime change. What would you say to people that think that?
Well, I'd say that it's that was over 20 years ago that memo was written, and the U.S. government doesn't really have plans that extend that far. So it wasn't really a plan. That was a concept that came out of the neocons, and maybe it was a plan that they thought they could eliminate all those regimes that might be hostile to the United States in the region. But it never really resolved itself into a plan per se. It just happens. And when you are a country like the United States and you find opponents around the world, and particularly Iran calling us the great Satan and so forth, Iran's been on the warpath against the United States from the very beginning. They targeted the Marine barracks in Lebanon, killed 283 people with a truck-mounted bomb. It was a terrible tragedy. They went after the French embassy. We actually, in the United States, we held back the Shah in Iran. We sent a four-star general to Iran in 1978 to tell the Iranian generals, don't interfere with the emergence of real democracy in Iran. And so they blocked the Iranian military that was loyal to the Shah from keeping the Shah in power. Khomeini decided that to purify his regime, to have a moral purpose in life, and for the Iranian people, he wanted to go after enemies. And so he picked two enemies, Israel and the United States. So the fact that after 40 some odd years, we're turning now to Iran and people are talking about regime change, it's sort of a natural course of events.
So as we see there, Wesley Clark doesn't deny that there was a memo, which again, he didn't see. There was a staffer who told him about the memo, right? So we don't even know exactly what its contents were. But that doesn't mean that that memo translated into proper policy and decision-making and action leading to that, especially 20 years, more than 20 years later. And of course, also some of the countries that were, fell in that memo, like Syria, weren't toppled by the United States. They were actually toppled internally by various militias and so forth, which is a different point. But here's the funny part. Wesley Clark later joined the panel with Dave Smith and Cenk Uygur, another retard, where they accused him of lying, right? So they're not accepting his word for it, that there was no plan for regime change from the beginning, right? They challenge him and he responds. So let's take a look at that.
And finally, before we go to the panel, and you're going to stay with the panel, and thank you for that, there are several members of the panel who believe this is all being done purely at the behest of Israel, that it's not in America's national interest to be doing this, and that Netanyahu has railroaded Trump into potentially attacking Iran. Do you think there's merit to that argument?
Well, not as much merit as you might think. The United States has continuously said that we're against the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And Iran has really, since the days of the Shah, had a nuclear program, and the Khomeini regime kept it going. There was a fake in 2007. They fooled American intelligence into issuing an estimate that said they had stopped it, but I don't think they stopped it. And so we know now they're very close to getting the materials to use a nuclear weapon. That's destabilizing the whole world, and especially the Middle East. So it's not just us, it's our friends and allies in the region that don't want it. And the Iranians themselves are working on longer and longer range missiles. So we don't need another hostile state that has sworn its purpose is to destroy another state to have nuclear weapons. It's not just about Israel, it's about global stability.
Okay, let's go back to the panel. Cenk Uygur, I mean, there's your answer from a former commander of NATO forces, which is it's not just about Israel wanting this to happen. It is in America's strategic interest to prevent Iran developing nuclear weapons.
Nonsense. So, I mean, I really respect General Clark. I don't know what's happened to him. That letter was very clear. The neocons and Israel First did execute it. They have knocked out 6 to 7 of those countries just like they said they would. They've gone to Iran at the end just like they said they would. If we're talking about a country...
Not just like they said they would. It said 7 countries in 5 years, and half the countries on the list were not toppled by the United States. So no, this memo never came to fruition.
That is destabilizing the region and the world with endless wars, that country is Israel. Look, this whole thing is topsy-turvy. The whole framing of the discussion is ludicrous. Israel has attacked 7 of its neighbors, not Iran. Israel forced us into the Iraq war, and they said it would be easy, and it was a disaster. They said they were doing it for the Iranian people, and then we wound up killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqis.
Not because of Israel, as the general just explained. He just said no, okay? And you still claim that it was because of Israel. There's no evidence that the Iraq war was because of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister then, Ariel Sharon, is on record telling the Americans not to do it because Iran is the real enemy. But he just keeps repeating it. He doesn't care.
We lost thousands of our own men. The fake weapons of mass destruction evidence came from where? It came from Israel. They pushed us into the war with Libya. Now there's modern day slavery back in Libya. Every war they have pushed us into has cost us trillions. Hold on, General Clark. Hold on. They have cost us trillions of dollars. And you know that. And they have cost us blood and treasure. And it's Israel doing it, General Clark. Be a patriot. Be a patriot. Stand up for America, not for Israel. I'm not going to go to another war for Israel. We're not going to spend trillions more for Israel. We're not going to lose American soldiers for Israel. The Israelis have bought 94% of Congress. The Israelis have bought Donald Trump. And this is a fact. And you guys keep obfuscating these facts.
Can we have some respect for the general, please? I think he doesn't deserve to be screamed at.
No, he's interrupting me. He should have respect for the American people, 85% of whom do not want to go. General Clark, why are you pushing us into this war when 85% of Americans don't want it? And you yourself know that the neocons have wanted this war for 20 years. Our interests? What interest? We said nuclear, and then we got rid of their nuclear facilities. Then now all of a sudden ballistic missiles. General Clark, tell me with a straight face that we have a right to demand that any country end their ballistic missile program.
Why don't you stop?
Ballistic missiles, we'd have to get rid of the whole world for Israel if we're going to get rid of ballistic missiles.
Let him respond.
Of courtesy to other people. Now,
General Clark,
you want to hear what I say? Listen. First of all, there is no they there. We've been through the Bush administration. There were neocons. We've been through the Obama administration. There were no neocons there. We've been through the Trump administration. He didn't want a war. We've been through the Biden administration. Now we're another Trump administration. When you say they, there's no they there.
He means the Jews, or the people manipulated by the Jews.
There's no secret plot behind
this. The Israeli lobby is the number one donor to every single person you mentioned. Biden, Trump, every one of them. The Israeli lobby has been here the whole time, General Clark.
Cenk, please let General Clark finish his point.
Common courtesy. Now just
I agree. Cenk, let the general respond.
And I'm going to say it not just to you, but to all the other panelists. So there's no they there. This is about national interests. And you can go through these states one by one. First of all, I was against the invasion of Iraq. I knew it was a mistake and it wasn't going to work out well. I was against it. But it's the men and women in uniform. Of course, you're not against your own soldiers fighting. You want them to succeed. But the mission was a bad mission, and I called it for that. Syria, there was a revolution there. President Obama said Bashar Assad shouldn't stay in charge. But unfortunately, he did until Turkey got rid of him. On Libya, I warned the United States not to intervene because there was no follow-on for that, and we've still got a mess in Libya. We've never been able to come to terms with Darfur, Sudan, and what's happening in the center of Africa. Now, when you turn to Iran has been a continuous problem for the United States. They killed hundreds of our soldiers with the explosively formed penetrators when we were in Iraq. They started this thing back in the late 1970s, early 80s. They assassinated a bunch of Iranian generals because they'd been to school in the United States. So what's their beef with the United States? They want trouble from the United States. That's their raison d'etre. That's what keeps the. Well, you can shake your head, but I'm telling you, look at the propaganda. So, is Israel concerned? Of course, Israel should be concerned. As the Ayatollah has said and others, when they get nuclear weapons, they're going to use them. Now, I've been all through the Gulf leadership. Maybe you've talked to those leaders too, but I have, and they don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They can't do much about it, but they hope that we will.
So that's four-star General Wesley Clark, in his own words, debunking what Dave Smith said. But Dave Smith still doesn't believe. So now he goes to Wesley Clark and he says, no, that's not what you said. That's not what you meant. This is what you really meant, Wesley. Why are you going back on what you said earlier, Wesley?
But I want to get Dave Smith's response to that. Dave Smith.
Dave Smith.
Okay, well, I mean, if the general who is on the record, not just on that Amy Goodman interview, but here on this show, Piers, who said the plans went back a decade before that, and that they were resurrected in a study paid for by the Israelis. If he's walking away from that or saying, well, yeah, that happened, but there were 4 different administrations in there, so there's no they there. Well, as Cenk was pointing out there, Benjamin Netanyahu's been here pretty much the entire time. The Israel lobby's been here pretty much the entire time. And you'd certainly have to admit, sir, it's an awfully big coincidence that you saw that there was a plan to overthrow 7 countries. And that since that time, now, obviously, none of us are arguing it didn't happen the way you said it was going to. It's supposed to happen in 5 years. And obviously, the war in Iraq ended up being a quagmire that was unforeseen.
Okay. Yeah. So it's an awfully big coincidence that in the 20 plus years after this memo that we don't even know the exact contents of, came out, and 4 administrations later, some of the unstable regimes that existed in the Middle East ended up falling. And some of them didn't. And some of the ones that fell didn't fall because of the United States, primarily, like Syria being a very good example. All right? Not to mention Dave's inability to understand how these countries function, that they're divided, Sunni versus Shia and tribal warfare and all that. No. It's all because of the memo. You see, it happened like the memo. And even when Wesley Clark is telling him, no, that's not how it happened, he continues to argue otherwise. So I don't know. What can you do? You can't argue with these people. It's Israel. It's the Israel lobby. It's Benjamin Netanyahu was there the whole way. No, he wasn't. Netanyahu was not the prime minister when that memo came out, Dave. So just it's lie after lie after lie. And it's impossible because the theme is so powerful right now on the internet that it's the Israeli lobby that is behind it. All right? It's the Israeli lobby that's forcing America into this. It can't possibly be something generic coming from the Americans or coming from the Iranians with all the activity that they've been doing. It has to be this third party, they, meaning the Jews, meaning the neocons who are, in the end of the day, influenced by the Jews. That's what this whole thing is. And you saw how he screamed like a maniac, that Chen guy, Israel. That's because you have a brain virus, where the only thing you see is Israel. The whole world orbits around Israel and the Jews who are behind everything. And nothing else matters, and nothing else is influencing. Even when the general himself is telling you what he meant by what he said, you still don't believe him. All right? God.